By Matt McGrath, environment correspondent. Image copyright Asselin Tirol Landeck. Image caption: A summertime flood in the Austrian Tyrol in 2005. Climate change has had a significant impact on the timing of river floods across Europe over the past 50 years, according to a new study. In some regions, such as southern England, floods are now occurring 15 days earlier than they did half a century ago. But the changes aren't uniform, with rivers around the North Sea seeing floods delayed by around 8 days. The study has been published in the journal Science. Floods caused by rivers impact more people than any other natural hazard, and the estimated global damages run to over $100 billion a year. Researchers have long predicted that a warming world would have direct impacts on these events, but until now the evidence has been hard to establish. Floods are affected by many different factors in addition to rainfall, such as the amount of moisture already in the soil and other questions such as changes in land use that can speed up water runoff from hillsides. This new study looks at this issue in some depth by creating a Europe-wide database of observations from 4,262 hydrometric stations in 38 countries dating back to 1960. The analysis finds a clear but complex impact of climate change on river flooding. Image copyright Gunter Bloschel. Image caption: The blue arrows indicate earlier flooding due to changes in the soil moisture levels. The yellow and green indicate earlier floods due to earlier snowmelt. The most consistent changes are in northeastern Europe, around Scandinavia, where earlier snowmelt due to warmer temperatures is leading to earlier spring floods. Around 50% of monitoring stations are seeing floods 8 days earlier than they did 50 years ago. The biggest changes are seen along the western edge of Europe, from Portugal up to southern England. Half the stations recorded floods at least 15 days earlier than previously. A quarter of the stations saw flooding more than 36 days earlier than in 1960. In these regions, the issue isn't snow melt, it's more about saturated soils. Maximum rainfall tends to occur in the autumn and gets stored in the soils. Heavier and earlier rain means that the groundwater reaches capacity earlier. It's the interplay between extreme rainfall and the abundance of rainfall, lead author Professor Gunter Bloschel, from the Technical University of Vienna, told BBC News. In southern England, it has been raining more, longer and more intensely than in the past. This has created a rising groundwater table and higher soil moisture than usual, and combined with intense rainfall, this produces earlier river floods. However, around the North Sea, in the Netherlands, Denmark and Scotland, the trend is towards later floods. The scientists believe this is due to changes in the North Atlantic Oscillation, now the weather phenomenon that pushes storms across the ocean into Europe. Image copyright Gunter Bloschel. Image caption: Across Europe, regions experience different shifts in the timing of floods, both earlier and later than now, is driven by differences in atmospheric pressure between the North Pole and the equator. Recent, rapid changes in temperatures in the Arctic are interfering with these pressure levels and changing the track of the oscillation and storms as well. According to this study, the storms are arriving later, and as a result some river flooding happens later too. Professor Bloschel says that this study shows clear evidence of the impact of human-induced climate change in many regions, but there are still some areas of uncertainty. Where the human imprint is obvious is in the northeast of Europe. It is quite a direct link with a warming climate and earlier snow melt, he said. However, the areas impacted by the now are more difficult to attribute to anthropogenic global warming. The jury is still out on that aspect. The study foresees subtle but significant impacts that could arise from the change in flood timing. There could be effects on river ecosystems, with salmon spawning later in the year. There could also be implications for hydropower stations, and for agriculture if fields stay wetter for longer. Image copyright Getty Images. Image caption: The UK has experienced severe flooding on many rivers in recent years, including on the Thames. The more serious concern is that if warming impacts the seasonality, it may also impact the scale of flooding, said Professor Bloschel. You could think of timing changes as the harbinger of future changes of flood magnitude. That is the more serious concern. If that happens, flood risk management will have to adapt, and that will be different in different parts of Europe. Other experts believe that the changes in flood timing identified by this study have significant implications for how we understand the risk of river floods and how we deal with them. Nearly every major city and town in Europe is built on a river, and we protect this urban infrastructure by using past floods as a gauge of the potential risk, said Mark Maslin, professor of climatology at University College London. The study shows that this approach underestimates the risk, as climate change has made European floods occur earlier in the year, increasing the potential impact. This means all the infrastructure that we have built to protect our cities needs to be reviewed, as much of it will be inadequate to protect us from future climate change-induced extreme flooding. Follow Matt on Twitter and on Facebook.